So we have a very special guest this week, Grace Faison, who is a lifelong resident of Brooklyn Heights and comes from a generations of Brooklyn Heights residents. And we are just delighted to speak with you, Grace. Thank you so much. Tell us about your generations coming to Brooklyn Heights, and you were mentioning a great grandfather who has a plaque.
Well, I'll start at the beginning.
Please.
The family came down here originally from Marblehead. They came from England, and because they were in shipping, came down to be in the waterfront and settled here because of being on the water. And then John Tesker Howard was the other kind of side of great grandfather. And he was one of the first founders of Plymouth and one of the people that called Beecher. So the whole family's been involved in Plymouth church history.
So your involvement in Plymouth Church goes back generations.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about your involvement in Plymouth Church in your lifetime and what it's meant for you.
Friendships. People are just so darn nice. Everybody is. I have a motto. We're all connected. We need each other, and you can't do it alone. I don't know if you know anything about my background. I went to Packer, went to work, became engaged to a Princeton guy who graduated during the war as a midshipman, went overseas when the minesweepers came back, and we were married. We were together around the country, and he went back overseas in the Pacific on a minesweeper. And I was out there. That's a story I'll tell you. I have a good story for you. And there was a typhoon off Okinawa, and he was washed overboard a week before my son was born.
You were 20 years old.
I was. And so I came home from the hospital to a fourth floor walk up at 6 Willow Street, which is no longer there, on my own. And I was a widow for 4 years. And I met Jack Faison, who was one of the most there is a picture of him. You should get a picture of him.
We will.
Everybody loved Jack. He was just funny and charming. He was also very bright. And he went to Poly, and he had a lot of family here. His family lived on Remsen Street. So we were Brooklyn, and we loved Brooklyn. And Jack was on probably every board in Brooklyn at one point or another. And I don't know, we just had a very good life. I was blessed for 50 years. And so I've been a widow since then, and moved down here, and always been involved. No big deal at Plymouth. Right now I'm clerk of the church, for what it's worth, clerk of the church. It means you get up and announce the meeting. So I have an honor, something that doesn't require doing anything. The biggest thing I do at Plymouth now is I support the Mission School of Hope in Cameroon. And this just recently, about 2 months ago, I and 2 other people gave a cocktail party to raise money for the children in Cameroon. There's a picture of them in my kitchen. And we raised enough money for 500 children to be fed for a year.
Wow.
And the other 2 people, we had it in Chris Owen's house, and Heather Gallivan and I did the party, while the host of the house was on a safari. So that was pretty challenging to give a cocktail party for about 80 people with the host not there. But we did, and we raised enough money for this Mission School of Hope. And that's one of the things. But I've always had a project. I'm very active on the history ministry, interested in it and supportive. We have 2 big lectures coming up in this fall of current writers one on Lincoln, and I won't go into the whole thing, but it's just wonderful to be part of something. I've never wanted to be head. I like being an engine. People get nervous if you ask me to do something. 20 minutes later, it's done. I like that. I like to be doing an end thing, and supporting somebody.
Where do you get your drive from? Because I mean, 20 years old, being a widow, and I just it's I can't imagine how daunting that would be. And here you sit many years later, still driven.
I have no idea. I have no idea. I've had a funny life. I have a lot of things you do not have time or want to hear about. So I just think it's important to be part of life. That's it. There's so many blessings. There's so many hurts, but there's so many blessings. Look for the blessings. Find the X ingredient.
I want to come back to Brooklyn Heights.
Yeah, okay.
Miss White's gate.
Garden.
Garden. Miss White's garden. Tell me about Miss
That
White.
building across the street was a garden, and it was big, and it had it. This thing, whole area was rocky, and it was rocks, and it had a wrought iron fence around it, and stairs up. And at the top level, they leveled it out. We had a sandbox and trees and things, and a place for kids to play. The people that owned it was lived across the street. The woman in her severe long dress watched out the window to be sure we all behaved. And you had to be interviewed to get a key to go in the garden. But us mothers of that age all went there with our kids. Jeff was a pain in the butt. He still is. 20 years younger than me, and he's still a pain in the butt. He threw sand at Wendy Bachman, so we were kicked out for a week. But outside of that, it was great. And that was a really lovely place to go. There was no promenade. There was a building there.
Where the playground is now,
Yeah.
at the end of Pierpont
Yeah,
Street.
there was.
Yeah, yeah.
And that actually the only place there was to go. You know the courthouse on Monroe Place?
Yes.
That has a nice long fence, marble, whatever it is, cement, and wide enough street. And I used to take Jeff there with a ball to play. And I met Ann Faison, who was Jack's sister, who had a daughter. And she brought me home and I met Jack. So that was how I met Jack.
Wow. Now the Penny Bridge. The Penny Bridge came down with when Robert Moses was doing a lot of the
Penny Bridge
there.
is now down. You know where you go down to the promenade, and there's a garden, and there's that big rock. That rock is in memory of Genevieve Beavers Earle, who was a councilwoman, and Jack ran her campaign successfully, and that rock is in memory of hers, and that belonged to her. That table.
This here.
Yeah, there's one just like it.
Wow.
It's a bet. And that was, we used to go sleigh riding under that. And I used to ice skate at the Brooklyn Ice Palace, and I used to roller skate, and I used to ride my bike. And I thought you grew up with your knees having sores on them for life.
What was it like being a young girl in this neighborhood when you were growing up? It must have been quite a special place.
No, it wasn't. I didn't date then. I didn't date at Packer. I had a neat bunch of friends. In fact, I put it away, but I have a little silver urn that says Gracie and Bobby, friends forever. I had a friend, I would go from 184 Columbia Heights around the block to 126 Willow Street and pick up Bobby Earle, and we walked to school every single day. Her father wouldn't let her wear lipstick, so at the end of this block, we'd stop and I'd give her lipstick. And we were really just great friends. And that was the kind of thing we had before Miss Hepburn's dances. We'd have women, we'd have 5 friends for dinner, but we didn't date. I didn't date.
What were Miss Hepburn's dances?
Oh, Miss Hepburn's dances.
Please tell me.
They were at Grace Church, and they were dancing classes, and you learned to dance. And I loved to dance. And as I got older, Miss Hepburn hired me one year when she wasn't well, and I taught ballroom dancing. And they hired somebody, very nice Spanish guy, to do the tango. Oh my God. I only did it one year. But no, Miss Hepburn's dances were very important. You had to be part of that. And I was a very good dancer, so I always danced, but I didn't have bows then. I didn't.
Well, let's talk about Mrs. Roosevelt. I know you had started to mention her to me, but I'd love to hear that story about how you got to know Eleanor Roosevelt.
My first job after I went to Catherine Gibbs was working at Greenwich House, 27 Barrow Street, a settlement house, and Mrs. Simkovich was the founder, and I was hired to do her book. And I worked for her every day, and Mrs. Roosevelt came for tea on Wednesdays, and I was supposed to make tea, and they had to show me how to bob a tea bag. I tell you, I never went into a kitchen because my stepmother, when she moved in with my father, she moved in with her cook. So I wasn't allowed in the kitchen. So I had tea with these ladies, and they thought I was sort of different. They were very relaxed in their dress and very easy and very, we talked about all sorts of things. They asked me questions about life and things. It was just an education. Mrs. Simkovich was one of the most wonderful people you could ever have the opportunity to meet. It was a privilege to work for her. She asked me to come and live with her that summer, and I didn't. But she came to my wedding when I married Jack, and she just was a lovely, lovely person. And Mrs. Roosevelt was too. And then I'd deliver the hats.
To Mrs. Roosevelt.
Yeah, I'd go to her house, and she said, "Come on in, Grace," and I'd give her the hat. I wouldn't hang out, but they were so nice to me, and they were curious about life in Brooklyn Heights.
Well, tell me about your memories of Robert Moses.
He was a very powerful man, and he had many dinners at Gladys James' house, which was that one. She was in Underwood. That
For
was
the
typewriters.
typewriters.
Oh,
I,
you're old enough to remember a typewriter.
I collect typewriters. Yeah.
And he was there all the time, and he loved talking to Jack. But he also came to Bellport weekends a lot to visit the Elliots. Oz Elliott was editor of Newsweek, and Oz and Jack were so. Jack liked talking to people who were intelligent, and Oz was bright, and the Elliots were good friends. And so we were often included in the Sunday night dinners when Robert Moses and his wife were there for dinner. So much so that we were invited to their house on Long Island. And then when I was teaching dancing that year with Miss Hepburn, the guy that they hired to teach me the tango took me to the Harvest Moon Ball,
The Spanish man.
the one in New York.
Mm-hmm. No, no,
I,
the Spanish dancers. That
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I said to Bob Moses, "Have you ever been?" He took us to the Long Island. He picked us up in his car. We went to Long Island and all of that. But I said, "Have you? This is something off your beat. Have you ever been to the Harvest Moon Bowl?" No, he hadn't. So Oz didn't go, and Jack and I and he all went to the Harvest Moon Bowl. Seeing people dance like that, it's just wonderful.
Yeah.
It's different than a Broadway show or anything. Their energy and their enthusiasm and the dresses that the women have on, it's an experience. So he did go with us.
Well,
So
for those of us who don't know, what was the Harvest Moon Ball?
I have no idea. It was just something that was a regular annual thing that people could sign up for, and then there was competition with who was the best.
Oh, so it
It
was
was
a.
competitive.
I see. I see.
Look it up.
I will.
I
I
haven't
will.
thought of it for years. I
Wow.
mean, that's 40 years ago.
Yeah.
But and he was curious. He was curious. He was kind of scary. He wanted to put a highway. I don't know whether I can't remember what it was Hicks or Henry Street, right down the block. And we sat on him really hard so that that didn't happen. That would have taken out all those houses and everything. We were not going to let him do that. And there was a building there. I don't know. He just wanted to change too many things.
Why do you think that was the case?
He felt he had to do something. He liked being powerful. I can't remember what the book says, but he liked telling you what he thought.
Was he a nice person?
He
Was he
was
nice
with
to
us.
be around?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, he was interesting. I don't think I'd use the word nice. He was not cozy. I like cozy. I'm very big on cozy.
It's just incredible to think that that moment in time, with your influence and those around you who are
Oh,
influencing Bob
not only
Moses.
us, it was a lot of people in the casino.
Yeah, but it could have changed Brooklyn Heights entirely.
Oh, yes. In those days, Brooklyn Heights people, the Heights Casino was not doing very well. And Malcolm Mackay, and I can't remember, and Jack, and his brother Seth, and my uncle David, and all sorts of people went to Gladys James and said, "We need the Heights Casino. It's the only club." And she financed them.
Wow.
And Jack was one of that group. There were lots of people, but people cared about things like that.
For those watching who maybe haven't been to Brooklyn Heights yet, what would you recommend seeing? What are some of your favorite places to direct visitors to?
Lassen and Hennings. I think we're so lucky to have a good delicatessen. I eat a lot on
You and me
Lassen and
both.
Hennings.
You and me both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we need to bolster the people who provide us. And it makes me sad to see what happened during COVID with those stores closing. I'm glad we still have the flower shop. I'm traded with those. And my grandmother and my stepmother used to get on the phone every morning and they would call a place called Delventhal. And remember this name because it means something. He was a butcher on Atlantic Avenue, and you have never in your life had a roast beef that tasted like that. The meat was incredible.
My mouth is
And
watering.
he loved Jenny Jerome, who was,
Winston Churchill's mother.
and he arranged steaks on a regular basis to go over to his young friend Churchill. And my grandmother, this is how they marketed. She got on the phone, she'd call Delventhal, I'll have lamb chops or this or I'll have that. And then she'd call Lassen and Hennings, and then she'd call Ralston's, and they all delivered. And she'd plan her menus with the cook, and that was how they, but they were old time places that knew you and liked you and were nice. Every place I go in, they're nice to me.
Wow. You've seen a lot.
Yes.
You've seen a lot. It's so fascinating to talk to you.
But it's nothing dramatic. It's nothing like having run a relay race or nothing big, no big deal. Just a life of being grateful and being aware how important people are. I think that's the thing. How important people are and friendships. We're all connected. We need each other and we can't do it alone. That's my thing. And I thank God for my blessings and the blessings of the people that have been in my life.
Well, I feel blessed to have talked with you today. Thank you so much. Thank you.